A little while ago, we ranked all the Alien and Predator movies, and I figured, hey, it's about high time to answer some unanswered questions about the Alien series. You know, there's literally like hundreds of those. So this video is just a tip of the, considering the shape of the Xenomorph's head, I'm just gonna say tip. But yeah, I figured that the only way to do this is to take off and do it from orbit. It's the only way to be sure.
Game over,
Question
man.
number
Game
one.
over.
Was the whole intent of the Nostromo run to find the alien? In the original Alien, there's a group of what amounts to space truckers on what's kind of a tugboat coming back from a shipping run. On the way, they intercept a message from a nearby moon and head down to investigate. On board is a man named Ash, who's their science officer, and he's revealed to be a synthetic, an android, and he's been instructed to get the alien specimen back to Earth, even at the expense of the crew. But did they just amend his mission when they discovered the alien species, or was it the plan all along? A popular thought is that the message interception wasn't accidental after all, and that the Nostromo's primary purpose was to find the source of the message, and I think that's the case. Let's review the evidence. In the beginning of the movie, Ash is in cryo with the rest of the crew. They aren't aware that he's an android, and he's taking measures to hide the fact from them. In Prometheus, we're shown that synthetics don't need to go into sleep chambers and can operate the ship's functions. And since that film takes place earlier than Alien, the world at large are aware of the synthetics' existence. Hell, even in Alien, they aren't shocked that robots exist, just that there is one on the ship without them knowing about it. We're also told that he was placed on the ship just 2 days before departure, so his inclusion seems a bit deliberate. Even though the missions that we see in the prequels have an android, and they say that Bishop being on board in Aliens is a standard procedure, those are missions, deliberate scientific missions. That's not so here, since the Nostromo is, again, just a big old truck. Plus, the entire remaining crew is shocked that Ash is a droid, and no one says, well, we were supposed to have one anyway, so him being there was secretive and intentional. When they get the signal, Ash is the one to quote the protocol saying that they have to investigate, and that's fine. That's what you would expect a science officer to do. He stays on board while the crew investigate the wreck, which is unusual to me because I would expect a science officer to want to go check out an unknown ship, but that's not super unusual. But here's the kicker. He seems super excited when they come back, almost agitated, and when Ripley is following quarantine protocols to deny them entry, it's Ash who lets them in, and that's the key right there. Number one, you have to assume that as a science officer, he'd be more inclined to follow the proper procedure for safety's sake and not let emotional response dictate his actions. Number two, you'd have to assume that as an android, he would have a set level of programming that he would have to be following. If he were truly a science officer robot put on that ship to just be a science officer with no ulterior motive whatsoever, there's no way he's letting him on that ship. Why would they program an android to do that? He's even the one that vigorously defends the chestburster from being stabbed by Parker, but that might be negligible. He might have reported back home the facehugger situation and they gave him new orders. So no, that doesn't make me think that he was in on it from the start, but those other things did. The way I see it, the only way this goes down is that Weyland-Yutani was aware of the signal, and there's no reason to think that they wouldn't have some clue what it was, since we know that they were at least aware of the events of Prometheus and Covenant now. But even without those movies, we can assume that they had already received the message. They hastily throw an android on a mission that's passing by, give him programming to ensure the specimen is brought on board, and then make sure it gets back to them. We know for a fact that they are very interested in getting the xenomorph, but the fact that Ash is even on the ship and acts in a way that a science-oriented bunch of programming would not shows that the entire mission was no accident. So you may say to yourself, well, why would they just have a trucking run do it? Why would they go through all this trouble instead of just specifically sending a mission of science officers to go find it? Well, but then again, that may come down to the whole corporate level of the thing and them trying to keep it on the down low and somewhat secretive. It's a little easier to cover up a bunch of truckers finding something than it is specifically creating a scientific crew to go and find them.
Game over,
Question
man.
number 2.
Game over.
What exactly is the Space Jockey? It's pretty iconic and used to be one of the biggest mysteries of film, and that's what that gigantic skeleton is in the beginning of Alien. The thing commonly nicknamed the Space Jockey. But, I mean, we have an answer now, right? I mean, it was just one of the engineers in a segmented spacesuit, wasn't it? I mean, Prometheus straight up showed one getting into his little suit with the elephant face helmet and sitting in that chair, so question done, right? I mean, that's the official answer. Ridley Scott has decided that the Space Jockey was a weird, smooth man in a costume and retroactively has given us the story, but let's go a bit deeper, eh? Let's first go behind the scenes. Originally, when the film was made, the jockey was an alien creature's skeleton. Ridley stated that he had the idea for the exoskeleton much later on, and early scripts had the jockey a random alien race that discovered the eggs and fell victim to a facehugger. But none of that matters once the director says that it's not anymore. But let's just look at the film itself. Considering that Scott saying it's an engineer doesn't necessarily have to be the answer if you're simply looking at the films themselves. And if we look at simply that, there's no way this is an engineer. For one thing, it's considerably and significantly larger. It's about twice the size of the engineers in both Prometheus and Covenant. But hey, humans are all different sizes, right? Maybe some engineers are just taller than others. Well, here's the thing. This guy has a mouth with teeth and a tongue. Kinda hard for them to retcon this when it's so blatantly shown. It's extremely prominent in this scene. No way to avoid that. When they show the engineer's helmet, it doesn't. So what is it besides a detail of retconning gone wrong? Well, for starters, what's it doing there anyway? It looks like it's been there for a while, and they say it's been fossilized, and there's eggs there. But this is less than 20 years after Covenant, and we know David straight up invented the aliens and facehuggers just a little while ago. So what's this ship doing there? Time travel? No, we're not at that point of the franchise yet. So first of all, fossils don't work that way. Maybe if he had said that it had calcified. Who am I kidding? Like, I would know if that would be more accurate. What do I know about calcification? But either way, it's clear that they're not clear how this process works and not evidence that it's been there a long time. He's a space trucker. He doesn't know fossils. And the damage seen to the ship could easily just be the amount of intense conditions on that moon. So, who knows how long it's been there? And look, the last we saw of David, he was pretty into making these weird engineered creatures and tampering with genetic structures and making new creatures. Who's to say he didn't just mess with the engineers, making this weird mock-up of one or whatever for whatever purpose necessary? He was looking to spread his new creation. Maybe he had created a new sort of delivery service. I don't know. There's certainly a time gap for this sort of thing to have happened and gives us some sort of reasoning for why it's so different from what we've already seen. Or whatever. Just listen to Scott, I guess, and just say there was just an engineer or whatever. Although I'm not just going to whip up some explanation on why one of those, the thing that they insinuated David totally wiped out, would then just end up with a bunch of the eggs and then grew teeth in about 15 feet of height and then took those eggs and crashed on some random planet. Sure, Ridley. Whatever.
Game over.
Question
man.
number 3.
Game over.
Would a facehugger affect an android? Here's another one hotly debated by the alien community, and that's if a facehugger would even go after an android, and if it did, would anything happen? Would the egg take? The films don't really give us much to go on. Ash doesn't encounter the eggs in the first one. Bishop isn't taken by the aliens, so we never see what they would try to do to him. There aren't any synths in Part 3 for the most part, but we never see them try to affect Winona in Part 4, and none of the films show the androids interact with the eggs or a facehugger, so there's really no evidence to swing either way. Some think that the alien reproductive system is so adaptive, considering that it has been shown to basically be able to utilize life from all over the galaxy. I mean, we've seen that it can work with whatever the Space Jockey is. Humans. I guess a dog or a bull, whichever. If it can make itself compatible with those systems which sustain life, then why not the system that an android maintains itself with? Aren't we all just machines using fluids to sustain ourselves? What's the difference really between our systems of function and whatever this is inside of Bishop here? You're telling me that what's running us, humans, is the same type of fluids and nutrients that would be inside this biomechanical monstrosity? You'd have to assume the androids would have some sort of system similar to a human's in order to function, so there may be enough similarities. Who's to say that the variation between internal organs of, say, an engineer and a human being is less than that of a human and synthetic? Plus, the general thought is that the chestburster doesn't actually gain nutrients from the host, considering that the odds of various species across the galaxies would be unlikely to be compatible universally, so it's thought that they are just choosing a warm, safe place to grow and then provide a food source upon hatching. If so, it would seem very likely that they would indeed be able to grow within an android, but that being said, if this was indeed the case, it seems unlikely that they would consistently choose things with mouths to hatch into. If they simply needed a warm place to grow, they could basically implant anywhere, right? And that alien in Part 3 was able to detect one growing in Ripley, so it's clear that they can sense things through pheromone or whatever, so I would contend that they are specifically choosing organics, and also particular types of organics, ones that they are compatible with for growing and would most likely not even choose an android in the first place. After all, we see the eggs consistently open when organic beings are nearby, almost like they can sense them. And in Covenant, they don't seem to react that way to David. Plus, I just remembered, Alien 3 kinda shows us that the alien takes on the characteristics of the host, whether a dog or cattle. The ensuming Xeno assimilated the four-legged stance and body shape, so it's clear that it derives some sort of genetic coding from its host. So it seems that the DNA is a part of the process. I'm assuming that androids don't actually have that. Their adaptive state may be rooted in that. They absorb the host's DNA and modify themselves to make the most use of it. So if it's engineered DNA, they adapt. Humans adapt. Predator adapt. Android, no DNA, no adapt.
Game over, man.
Question
Game
number 4.
over.
How did the facehugger get on the ship between Aliens and Alien 3? Okay, this one is going to make people mad. So, in Alien 3, it's revealed that Ripley's been impregnated by an alien and has one of the little guys, or in this case, gals in her. But how did the facehugger even get there? Bishop remote dropped the Sulaco down and they get right in it. He flies it around a while and they briefly touch down for Ripley to get out, and they're in a safe alien-free zone. When we next see him, he's clearly been cruising around a bit and says that he was looking for a safer spot and they leave the planet. He picks up Ripley and it's clear the Queen is able to stow aboard, but they're away from the egg sac and the rest of the eggs that were in the colony. So where did that one come from? It's unlikely the Queen just brought it with her, just carrying one with her like a football or something, and there's not many other ways for it to have gotten there. And there is one, but you're not gonna like it. But Bishop did it. Seriously, he's the only one. Nothing's getting on that ship without him noticing it. Well, I guess except the Big Queen, but otherwise. And he's the only one whose presence is unaccounted for. Hicks is in no condition to do it, or stop someone from doing it. No, the only way an egg is getting on that ship is during the time frame when Ripley is retrieving Newt, when we don't see the ship and its whereabouts. This is the only period of time that egg can get there. It's not doing it in space, and it's not doing it once they take off. So unless that queen just happened to have one with her for whatever reason and stowed it while chasing them, which I don't know, seems a little unlikely to me. What, she just had one with her, or she brought it with her? No. What seems more likely is that an android programmed by a corporation is following the orders of said corporation to retrieve a specimen. I'm not saying the Bishop is a bad guy. He consistently showed that he was trying to help everyone stay alive. But if take care of others was part of his programming, but retrieving a specimen was also part of that programming, just grabbing an egg to take it home can satisfy both of those functions. It's possible that he didn't even intend for it to hatch to get Ripley or the others, but that was just unfortunate timing. You may say, doesn't that contradict the part where he states that he's inhibited from harming humans? Wouldn't taking an egg only lead to the harm of humans? Again, we're talking about mission programming. The same company that put in those inhibitors and programmed them are the people that want the aliens and the eggs. Why wouldn't they have a just-in-case protocol in there? It's the most likely scenario, even if it's an uncomfortable one, because I mean, we all like Bishop. But the only other option is that the Queen just grabbed one, carried it with her in a place we just happen to not be able to see while she's attacking, and then just kinda stashed it somewhere, like, you know, just in case. Sorry, Lance fans, but Bishop is our guilty party.
Game over,
Question
man.
number 5.
Game over.
Oh, how did that facehugger affect both Ripley and that animal? So it was established in the first movie pretty strongly that a facehugger implants its egg and then dies. And it's its whole life purpose. Once achieved, it's no more. But here's a problem. In Alien 3, there's multiple implantations. There's Ripley, of course, and then there's either the dog or the ox, depending upon which version you're watching. We don't see much, but we do see one egg on the ship, so there is one there. But how does it infect two hosts without dying? Well, one of the answers for this can be partially determined in the assembly cut. It's a big ox that's implanted, and near its body a facehugger is found. But look at this thing. It is clearly not a standard issue space crab. It's bigger, and the concept here was that it's a unique and special type of the species that is able to implant a queen within a host. This version can also apparently support having multiple embryos. The concept isn't completely unheard of, considering that the Pred alien thing in Requiem, if you consider that canon or whatever, can drop in a bunch of the little buggers. The royal version was reported to have the ability to create one queen and one drone with the intention of creating a colony. In the regular version of the film, which does not include the royal facehugger, this can still be implied. You can make the assumption that a facehugger that is capable of creating a queen is a different sort of creature, even if we don't see it. There's also the remote possibility that the egg is on board the ship, and that accounts for one of the hatchlings, but that there is indeed either a second egg or just a random second facehugger that made its way on board without us seeing it. But here's the thing, there really isn't a chance for there to be a second facehugger that just happened to make its way on there. I've already said that I think that Bishop brought that egg on board, and it being a special queen-bearing egg makes that even more likely, as this is something that Weyland-Yutani would find more intriguing.
Game over,
Question
man.
number 6.
Game over.
Is Bishop 2 human? Hey, speaking of Bishop, how about the one at the ending of part 3? He comes down to talk to Ripley and claims to be a human being and the creator of the Bishop android, stating that it was made in his image. He's then struck on the back of the head and his ear is in a precarious positioning. So, here's the hints that he may be human. He says that he is. He bleeds a red blood that's unlike the other androids, which have a white substance instead. He shows quite a bit of emotion when Ripley kills herself. And he shows quite a bit of pain when struck, unlike Ash did in the first film. Although those instances were mostly removed from the theatrical cut. There's also some external material, of which the canon can be questioned, that states that he was human and would die much later on, with his greatest regret not convincing Ripley of the alien's importance. On the opposite side of things, he's only listed as Bishop 2, and just because he says he's real doesn't mean that he is. Plus, he sure took that hit like a champ, Seems like a human would not survive that. There's some behind-the-scenes evidence both ways, since in the original script it was clear that he was human. The liner notes state that he has no wires and no milk, and the blood was real. He also defiantly claims to not be a droid and then dies. In nearly every version of the script, the character was shown to be human, but he didn't die in the finished version, and that was revised about 10 times during shooting, so it can't be seen as any sort of definitive answer. The whole "they only credit him as Bishop 2" thing is pretty negligible because they never really state that on screen, and his name for credits doesn't truly affect anything. I mean, unless they straight up called him that android guy, it's pretty circumstantial. In an interview, Lance Henriksen said the studio didn't even tell him which way they were going since they hadn't yet decided themselves. They weren't sure if they intended to bring the character back and in which way they would, so they didn't commit either way. The actor himself believes the guy to be an advanced android though, with simulated blood as an extra level of subterfuge, and personally, I think that's the only way this goes down. Based on the other films, hell, Alien alone, ignoring Prometheus and Covenant, we know that the droids have been around for a long time now. Quite a while. There's 57 years between Alien and Aliens, and they didn't treat synths as a new thing. And Prometheus took place a couple of decades before that. We're told that David, who is around as early as 2079, and keep in mind Alien 3 is around 2179, 100 years later, is an 8th generation droid, so that by the time of Bishop 2, droids have been around a while. There's a variety of models that look like David, Ash, or even Lydia Dietz. The Bishop model isn't special, he's just one of a bunch. Bishop 2 is said to be a synthetic component designer, and I guess the other Bishop was made in his image and was sent because she would feel comfortable with him. Think about that for a second. The guy who created this version of the droids, I guess, made just one version that looked like him, and it just so happened that he looks exactly the same. We have no idea how long ago the model was conceived, but what are the chances that they designed it to look like this guy and they're still the same age, with the same haircut and everything? Even if I made an android that looked like me 5 or 6 years ago and I stood next to it, we would look pretty different. That model would have a whole lot less gray in their hair, I imagine. But if you take Bishop 1 and 2 and put them next to each other, they're exactly the same. So, this is an answer that I think is pretty unanswerable, and I'm sure that this isn't a final say on this. I'm not saying this is definitively right. I just think that it's kind of suspect that of all the different varieties of models of androids that are out there, all the different faces, it just so happens that the one on this important mission looks like this guy, and they just happen to have him available, and he just happens to still look exactly the same. It's more likely that, like Lance said, he's an advanced model. WY probably had more sophisticated models for secret missions with blood substitutes and greater programming for acting like pain's a thing, all the better for espionage. They're not going to send a higher model on a military run, especially when everyone is fully aware that he's a synth. So, when it came time for this mission, it would not be hard to grab one of those, give it a Bishop model face, and send it on its way.
Game over.
Number
man.
7.
Game over.
Is Vickers an android? Here's another character that's up in the air. Vickers, from Prometheus, played by Charlize Theron, has a lot of factors pointing either way, so let's take a look. In the beginning, she recovers very quickly from cryosleep, immediately heading to work out. She's abnormally strong, and here's a weird one. The med pod is set to male. The med pod in her quarters is set to a setting that wouldn't work on her. Wayland is also a little too old to be her direct father. She's like 30 or so, and he's over 100, and that's not impossible, but it is a little iffy. But here's the thing, so much of that is pretty circumstantial. The med pod wasn't for her, it was for her father. It was a private thing, meant for him only. She could just recover from cryosleep quickly due to extensive training and fitness, and as far as her strength, it's likely that David is holding back, allowing himself to be manhandled. We see from Ash that if a synthetic wants to show its strength, it certainly can. But this isn't that. David doesn't need to be strong here, and it may actually be in the better interest of his other agenda to go along with her. Because she also shows some pretty strong emotions, such as jealousy and fear. And sure, she's cold, but she's also one of the wealthiest people on the planet, not exactly good at interacting with the people that she sees as lower class. Her interactions with Janek shows her trying to interact better, and she even bones the guy down. And here's the seemingly final say on the matter. When asked point blank, Damon Lindelof, who wrote the film, stated the character is definitely not a robot. But you know what? He's wrong, and I can prove it, and solve one of the biggest issues in the film. She's an android, a synthetic, and she's composed of a large number of complex instructions and capabilities. And near the ending of the movie, she's in this shuttle that crashes down pretty roughly. When she gets out, you can see that she's dazed and staggered from the roughness of the landing, and it probably jostled her internal programming, specifically her motor functions that control her horizontal movements. That's right, her code was so messed up it prevented her from moving to the left or to the right, and she could only run in a straight line, answering the questions and explaining one of the dumbest movie moments of all time.
Game over,
Question number
man.
8.
Game over.
What's up with time on the Prometheus? I guess the days are just longer here, like they're more than 24 hours. Don't believe me? Just listen to David.
How long?
2 years, 4 months, 18 days, 36 hours, 15 minutes.
Any casualties?
That's right, he says 18 days, 36 hours. He does not say 19 days, 12 hours, which is how that would work. So, what's the deal? How long do androids measure time? Vickers didn't immediately question him or correct it, so I guess that she either didn't catch it or, oh wait, I said she was an android, so is that just how they measure days? I don't know. Well, whatever it was not the writer's fault. Lindelof states that the scripted line is 2 years, 4 months, and 18 days, and that's where the line ends. Neither Scott nor Fassbender have ever spoken about it, so that's left up in the air. But one of the other writers, John Spietz, seemed to indicate that it was intentional, tweeting, "Robots have been showing off with this trick as long as there's been robots." But I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean. What trick? Being wrong about time? Was it on purpose? Was it to show that David was faulty from the get-go with flaws in his programming? If so, why didn't Vickers catch it and point it out? Did she just not care? Or is she simply really dumb, kinda like most of the other characters in the film? Well, I found the definitive answer for this one, but I can't reveal it here. But I will post it, just not right now. I will reveal it in exactly 1 year, 14 months, 33 days, 23 hours, and 66 minutes.
Game over.
Question
man.
number 9.
Game over.
How do the Xenomorphs see? Come on, look at this guy. How does he see anything? There's certainly no visible eyes, or at least what we think of when we think of eyes. I guess Giger himself stipulated that there be none because he thought that would be creepier. And this is from a guy that was like, its head is a penis, but there's a skull in there too. But you know what? No eyes are what's gonna make this creepy. Now, if you check out the design from the original film, there's what appears to be a skull underneath its penis head, but it doesn't appear again in the later entries. There's a couple of reasons for this. One is that it's just a simple element of its skull structure and not indicative of any functional purposes. It's just kind of a coincidence that it resembles a human skull. It could also be that since we know from the later films that the alien takes on traits of its hosts and that it simply adapted a similar skeletal structure, but again, isn't functional. Considering a large number of the later aliens in the other films also came from human hosts and don't show this trait, I think it's more likely the first option, just a fluke of this specific example's growth structure. In Alien 3, we're actually shown some stuff from the alien POV, and it looks like a Beastie Boy video, but this isn't necessarily cite how it sees things, or could just be a representation for us, the audience. We're again given this point of view in Covenant, and it looks a little different, but it's again a version of what the Xeno sees. So, there's a bunch of theories on how they see things. One is that they actually do have eyes, and they may simply be where that skull appears in the first film, just set back further. But their eyes are deeper set, and their exoskeleton acts as a sort of reflective two-way mirror, so you can't see them. Another thought is that they're Matt Murdock style, using a form of echolocation to see its environment. One of the video games actually seems to insinuate that the mouth is their sensory organ, which seems a little odd considering how frequently they're jamming it into things to kill with. To me, I go with the notion that they do have eyes, but not in the way that we think of them. This is an alien being, a life form that's pretty unique and different from us, and several of their other organs are quite different looking, so the same could probably be said about their eyes. Under that base of the shaft, there's what would normally be what we think of as the face, and who knows what's under there. We can't quite see under this, and there could be any number of sensory organs going on, and I think that there's something similar to what we call eyes. Check out this alien skull replica. There's this portion right over here that could easily be interpreted as some sort of eye socket. Now, when we look at a regular alien head, that would be somewhere over here. So, if there were something like an eye under there, we wouldn't see it, but it's pretty clear that something can be there. Just looking at you. Right now. Always watching.
Game over, man.
Number 10.
Game over.
Is AVP canon? Yes, this old question right here. Things seemed on the up and up for a while. You had the 4 Alien movies, and along comes these crossover films that seem to fit with everything all together, right? The only thing that stands out is that if you're accepting it as canon, you have to assume that the Bishop in Alien 3 was indeed an android, since it would be weird if this random scientist happened to look exactly like Mr. Wayland. But then along comes Prometheus and Covenant, and those films seem to establish that the Xenomorphs weren't a thing until those movies. They state that David straight up created them, or at least tinkered around with the fluid stuff until they created themselves. Either way though, they kind of contradict the AVP films, which not only take place in this universe's far past, meaning our times, but they also show aliens way back in history, so they've been around here for thousands of years. That seems to directly contradict each other. Seems like when Prometheus was being written, writer Damon Lindelof claims that Ridley Scott gave him a dirty look when he brought up AVP. You could simply wave it away and say that the AVP films are a separate universe from the proper one. You could theorize that they're canon to the Predator universe, given that there was an alien skull in the Predator ship back in Predator 2, a movie that takes place a long while before Covenant. But even then, you could also simply say that the skull there is not a xenomorph, and just another alien species with an elongated dickhead. So, considering that Scott himself doesn't view them as canon, and at this point, neither does most of the fan base, it would appear that the AVP films stand on their own. But what if they were? I know that it's pretty much official that it's 3 separate film universes and they're not tied together. That's the easy way, but what if we wanted to make a case that they were? Is there a way that they could all be tied together? Sure, I mean, if we're saying that the Bishop 2 was an android in part 3, then that only leaves the whole David created the aliens thing. And before you say, but if Bishop were modeled after Mr. Wayland, wouldn't it be a bit more known? Possibly, but then again, he's just a Wayland in what appears to be a long line of Waylands. I don't know what 3 Getty generations ago looked like, and it's possible that whatever hubbub was made happened during the 50-some year period while Ripley was sleeping. Ripley. Ripley Van Winkle sleeping. Wonder if that was intentional. But anyway, so Wayland in AVP is the original guy. Bishop 2 is a synth and patterned after him. So then, what about the David thing? Didn't he create and invent the xenomorph as we know it? That's the story, but then what's this on the wall? So look, here's the Deacon, which is the thing that we see at the ending of this movie. So they've existed before. The one that we see born here is not the first. Even though it seems like a pretty unique series of events, a man infected by the goo has sex and impregnates a woman, which becomes a sort of a giant squid facehugger sort of thing, which then implants in an engineer and hatches into the Deacon. That seems pretty specific, but then here's a Deacon. Keep in mind that they believed that the engineers had long since been dead, and they said that the one in stasis had been there for 2,000 years. So these wall carvings have been there for a very long time. So, thousands of years ago, there was something that looked like a deacon, showing that these beings are not unique to this time frame. Also, take a closer look at this wall carving. This top portion sure kind of resembles the Queen's headpiece, which I'm just going to go ahead and call a crown. Sure, that could just be me interpreting what I'm seeing. It could just be a couple of similar shapes that I'm just projecting the Queen onto. But you know what? These are freaking face huggers. I mean, the one on the left here might have a slightly different structure to it, but this one on the right is clearly the form that we all know and love. And it's even on a human being implanting away. This image right here shows a face hugger on a human being. That proves that what David creates in Covenant is not a new thing. He's not inventing the alien. He's recreating it, allowing it to take on the form it took thousands of years ago, apparently. So, since we have in-film evidence that traditional facehuggers existed millennia back, it's not a big jump to say that traditional xenomorphs did as well. So there, yeah, officially AVP is not canon. It's a separate universe, but with the caveat that you have to accept Bishop 2 as an android, it sure as hell can be. And you know what? Do you want more proof? Check out this scene from AVP Requiem. Just look right somewhere in there. Or what? Oh, all right. Check out this scene. Oh, damn it. Somewhere in. Oh, all right. I'll show you. All right. Somewhere in there's proof. Just take my word on it. So there you have it. Oh, great. Okay, this can't be good. Okay, well, if you enjoyed those questions and answers, please let me know down below in the comments if you have any other questions that you would like to ask, or if you have an issue with any of the answers that I gave. You could also put that down below in the comments, of course. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. I'd appreciate that. If you like what you see on the channel after you've checked out one or two other ones, please consider hitting the subscribe button. I'd appreciate that as well too. You could share it to your friends even, I don't care. And if you really want to help out, go to patreon.com/movietimelines and help support the channel like these people right over here do. They're pretty awesome for doing so. They help me go into space and put me through things like this. I guess you can do that as well too. Certainly appreciate that. In the meantime, I'm on my way back down to Earth, and I'll see you very shortly for another great video. Thanks guys. Bye-bye.